So now that we have our hardware set up, what does 3D in After Effects mean? Let's click over to the next composition, which is really just a screen capture. So in comp number 1, what do you mean 3D? If I select this, then place my cursor over the comp window, then use the tilde key, I'll just zoom out a little bit so we can see this entire frame. This is a screen capture from a popular 3D application. The 3D in After Effects may not be what you're thinking. From this other 3D application, you can see that there's all kinds of sculpted geometry, both polygonal and NURB. There's volumetric shading, layered textures, and even some autodynamics that are happening in our scene according to real-world physics. This isn't what After Effects does. Let's jump back to our timeline by using the tilde key again. Then move on to comp number 2, creating 3D layers in After Effects. Here we have a still image that we want to make 3D in After Effects. Now, 3D in After Effects uses properties of a 3D environment, but each layer in 3D space is really just a plane. Consider a stiff playing card. It has the ability to rotate and spin and move in 3 dimensions, but it doesn't have volume. This is the same in After Effects. Now, if we want to take this into the 3rd dimension, all we need to do is open up our Switches column, and inside our Switches column, turn on the checkbox for 3D. That's it. If you have the layer selected, you can see an obvious characteristic of the layer change when you click on the 3D layer switch. I'm going to close up all of the framing on the right-hand side of the application window so we can have a little more real estate to see our composition. Now, if we navigate back down to the timeline, then open up the parameters for this layer, we can see that not only do we have the transformation values for this layer, but we also have material options now. Material options are unique to 3D layers, and we'll take a look at those a little bit later. If we open up the properties for the transformation for this layer, then open up our timeline a little bit in order to see those, you can see that the transformation properties for the layer have also changed. Now, instead of only 2 properties for position, we have 3. We also have 3 properties for scale, and for orientation, we actually have 4 different properties. In the rotation values, we have a new property for orientation, which is also a value described by degrees. We also have values for X, Y, and Z rotations that we can animate separately. Of course, opacity is still only 1 dimension, and that remains unchanged. But if you had the transformation values closed, you might not have noticed that change in the timeline. The big change is the visible axis on your layer in your comp window. The axis is a 3-point axis. Although we can't see the z-axis very well, it's the blue circle in the center, which is really an arrow pointing directly at us. Each one of these axes relates to a different dimension in 3D space, x, y, and z. The x is represented by the red arrow, the y by the green arrow, and the z by the blue arrow. Now, if you can't remember which color goes to which dimension, you can remember the channels, which are RGB, and those relate exactly to x, y, z. So the red would be the x value, the green would be the y value, and the blue would be the z value. Now the movement for this layer still occurs around the anchor point, but can be modified in 3 separate dimensions.